Welcome back to Sports Radio 1290. You're listening to the Kevin and Mike Show. Kev's out today, taking a day off. He'll be back tomorrow. I'm just Iron Mike Luke filling in for him. Let's go straight back. Let's go straight to the phones. We have a very special guest on, Sean Malone, to talk about the '88 U of A basketball team and his documentary. Sean, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, Mike. Thank you so much for having us on.
We appreciate it. Talk to me a little bit. Obviously, the '88 team, even though it was the '97 team that won the national title, you always get the sense in Arizona, that, especially in Tucson, that the '88 team is still maybe the one that resonates the most. What have you encountered as you've done your research for this documentary about the '88 team?
Well, that's absolutely the case. I mean, that team had, Sean Elliott, Steve Kerr, the Gumbies. It was such a fantastic team, and especially for Tucson, which up to that point had not seen a Wildcat basketball team, of that caliber. So, this what we've really discovered so far is that people have like a very special place in their heart for that team. My brother and I certainly do, and we had a suspicion, other people probably do too, and they'd probably like to see a feature film made about this.
What's your take on how the importance, obviously everybody knows about how great Sean Elliott was as a player, but how rare was it for a kid like that to, Tucson, not exactly known as a hotbed of high school basketball talent, to literally just kind of pop up on Tucson's west side and kind of become the marquee figure of the Lute Olson era?
Well, it was, if you talk to any of those guys, Kerr, Elliott, or Lute, they'll say it was a game changer for Arizona because, here you had a McDonald's All-American, one of the best high school players in the country, before coming into Arizona, and not really heavily recruited because back then you didn't have the internet, you didn't have all these, recruiting trails where everybody knew everybody. It was kind of more closed off, and Sean saw what was going on at Arizona, and he saw what Lute was doing, and he was like, yeah, I'll play there.
Was it a pretty easy sales job for Lute Olson?
I think so, yeah. I mean, when we interviewed Sean, he talked about how, he used to go to games when he was a student at Troy High School. He'd go to the Wildcat games, and he said the arena would just be empty, But after Lute came in, everything changed, and that those teams got better and better, and Sean saw it as a real viable place for him to be.
Would you say that he was this the kind of scenario where, with or without Sean Elliott, they were going to get to a certain point, but he really kind of pushed that process forward, really culminating in that '88 team with such a varying degree of personalities and talent?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think the program would have been, very good or great, had that not happened. But I think Sean just put the whole thing on fast forward. He really gave them a jump start. Prior to that, another big break for Lute was recruiting Craig McMillan, who was another McDonald's All-American.
Yeah, absolutely. What about that '88 team do you think is something you've uncovered that maybe the average U of A fan might not know or might not quite appreciate? When we talked to Kevin O'Neill about that, he said that whole year could be summed up in one word: fun. He said, the whole year was fun. Team practices were fun. Team meals were fun. The bus rides were fun. And let's face it was fun for the fans. I mean, that team is still a fan favorite to this day. How does Steve Kerr, how did he fit into all this? When he came back from that injury, did his teammates, did his coaches think that he'd be able to come back and be the player that he was? Or was there a lot of hesitation about that might have been it for him?
Well, at first they thought it was it for him. In fact, the first doctor who evaluated his injury said, you'll never play again. But luckily, Steve got a second opinion, and I think we're all thankful for that. But yeah, I mean, Steve said in retrospect, it was the best thing that could have happened because he was able to mature and grow and come back full force. And in his words, when he came back from that injury, they were stacked. They were a juggernaut.
And that everybody remembers kind of his difficult game in that Oklahoma game. But how did that all transpire? I mean, was this a situation where did he know early on this just wasn't his day and that it was going to kind of have to be Sean that was going to have to carry them? How did that, because it was just such an un-Steve Kerr-like performance, especially considering his pro career and all the amazing shots that he hit in crunch time situations.
Sure,
sorry. Yeah, you're talking about that Final Four game?
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, Steve, when we interviewed him, he said, he's been in pro games. He's been he's been part of championship teams, 5-time NBA championships. He's hit big shots, and that's the one game that he still thinks about and just kind of haunts him. I think he really has some regrets about that game.
Do you think Arizona will ever see, in the way college basketball is designed right now, do you think that Arizona will ever see a player, a talent, a personality like a Sean Elliott? I mean, you go to see kids in the park on the west side near Cholla still emulate his game, and they have no clue who he was. It's just their parents giving them hand-me-down stories to him.
Yeah. Well, hope springs eternal, so let's certainly hope so. But, I mean, look at all the great players we've seen in recent years, and look at what Sean Miller's doing with the program. I don't know that Arizona fans could expect or want much more talent than we have. We really have a bright future ahead of us.
I would certainly second that. What about, was this a team, and you mentioned what KO said about how everything was fun, was this a team that just had a really good camaraderie with each other, a team that, in their spare time, they were choosing to spend their time with each other? Yeah.
As a filmmaker, you're always kind of looking for conflict because conflict drives story, and as we've asked some of these guys, what are some conflicts you remember from that season, or more broadly, what are some struggles, from that season that maybe we don't know about? And it's funny because they all they think about it, and then they're like, we all just got along, we played for each other, we had a ton of fun. They don't remember any of those things. Not to say there weren't any, but from their memories, everything about that season was, a very, very special time.
What did they think? Did they look at themselves as kind of rock stars at that point, or was that something later on that they realized, hey, man, we were a pretty big deal at that point?
We asked a couple of guys that. We asked Steve that. He kind of laughed it off, said, we didn't really think of ourselves as rock stars, but they definitely felt the love. One aspect of that season that a lot of fans will remember is people used to go to the airport and greet the team and cheer them on after road trips, and of course after they came back from the Final Four, the same thing. And then there was a parade for them, and then a huge crowd of 30,000 people at Arizona Stadium to greet them after losing in the Final Four, just to say, thank you. This season will go down in history.
What got you guys interested in making this documentary? Was there a moment? Was there just kind of a culmination of things? What really led you down that direction?
Well, I mean, we always knew it was a good story because, we grew up in Tucson, and it was really the formative sports story of our childhoods. But as far as, driving the film forward, my brother, my brother Brad, he's one of the most expert U of A basketball fans you're going to find. And, he knows so much about the program's history, and this has been a passion project for him for really over 5 years. And I came on a couple of years ago because I have a filmmaking background, and I said, let's fast track this.
When can we expect some more movement on the documentary? Is there anything to announce?
Yeah, so today we unveiled our trailer exclusively on Twitter, so you can find us at Wildabout88, and we're also at Facebook.
Throw that one out there again for the listeners.
Sure, at Wildabout88, we unleashed the trailer today. We're still in production, which means we're still filming interviews. But best case scenario, I'd say in about a year, we should have what we need.
Okay. Sean, we can't thank you enough for your time, buddy, and we'd love to get you on as that project comes closer to completion. You're welcome to come on anytime.
Thank you, and if I just may say, wildabout88.com or Twitter, Facebook, Wildabout88.
Absolutely. We appreciate it again, man. We'll definitely be in touch.
You're the best. Thanks, Mike.
Okay, thanks again. Come back with us on the other side. You're listening to the Kevin and Mike Show on Sports Radio 1290.